Hello and welcome to section 1-1. I usually refer to this section as kind of the wake up again, remember some of those things that you may have forgotten over the course of the summer. Obviously, this summer was a little crazy, so we're going to start with 1-1. We're going to talk about sums, differences, multiplication, quotients, orders of operations, addition and subtraction rules, lots of those little things that over time can cause you some issues. So up at the top here, we have, a reminder of our Pemdas. One of the things I always want to remind students, though, right, is that multiplication and division and addition and subtraction happen simultaneously from left to right, okay? So let's not forget that as we go through and do these. Okay, with sums and differences, remember if the signs are the same, we just add them together, keep the sign. If they're different, we subtract the bigger from the smaller, and we just keep the sign of whatever the larger number was. Okay, so we've got lots of little examples we're going to go through here just to kind of remind you of some of these things as we go. And so obviously if you have any questions, feel free to let me know or ask during class time. So here, right, we're going to hit on a whole bunch of these. Okay, obviously at the top here real quick, I do want to remind you of this, right? Subtraction is the same as plus a negative, and if you have minus a negative, that's the same as plus a positive. So we start right here, and we have a negative 12 minus 23 minus 11. So notice how all these are negative, right? We have the negative 12, negative 23, negative 11, which means that we can just bring all of these together and then keep the negative sign. So really, this is 12 plus 23, which would be, right, but we have to keep it negative. So this would be a negative 35, and then we have this other negative 11 that we have to deal with. So that gives us a negative 46. Okay, for example, 2 over here, right, again, these are all addition and subtraction, which means we're going to work from left to right. So if we do 15 minus 18, that's a negative 3, and then we have plus 5 plus a negative 12. So if we have negative 3 plus 5, that's going to give us 2 plus a negative 12, right? Remember, that's the same as minus 12. So you can look at it either way, but 2 plus a negative 12 gives us a negative 10. For example, 3 here, we have to remember to distribute this 2 before we do anything else, right? We have to deal with what's in parentheses. So that's 6c plus 2c plus 8. So now we have to combine like terms. So remember, we have a c here, we have a c here. They're the only variables, so we can combine them. Here, there are no c's, so we can't combine it. So 6c plus 2c gives me 8c plus 8. Okay, number 4 over here, we have p, we have q, we have q, we have p. So remember, we can only combine variables that are the same. So we have this 6p that can come together with this, right, negative 9p. Then we have this negative 3q that can come together with this positive 5q. So if we bring these two together, 6p minus 9p, that's a negative 3p. And then we have a negative 3q plus 5q, these are the positive 2q. So you have a positive 5, a negative 3. Okay, it leaves you with a positive 2. So some people don't like to leave it this way because they don't like this negative out in front. So if you feel the need to do it, you can rewrite it as 2q minus 3p, but in all honesty, either way is mathematically correct. Number 5, we distribute the 3 to both one of these pieces. This gives it 3 times 3 is 9 minus 3t plus, we have to distribute this 2, so this would be plus 2. And then 2 times a negative t leaves me with a negative 2t. So what can we combine? Well, this 9 and this 2 can be combined to give me 11. And then this negative 3t and negative 2t can be combined to give me negative 5t. So that's 11 minus 5t. Now, on number 6, it brings up a little bit of an interesting circumstance. It really depends on how you want to handle the situation, on how you want to deal with this problem. Some students just like to multiply by 3/4 and get it out of the way. Some students are like, I don't want to have to deal with this, so I'm just going to try and get rid of it altogether. We'll just multiply all this through. In all reality, the easiest way to handle these is to just distribute. Okay, so we distribute my negative 3/4 to each piece. So if I do a negative 3/4 times a negative 12, well, a negative times a negative is a positive. So you could do 12 divided by 4 is 3, times 3 is 9r cubed. 16, here we have a negative and a positive, so we know it's going to be a negative, so it's minus. Then we have 16 divided by 4 is 4. 4 times this 3 gives me 12, so this is going to be minus 12r. And then we have this minus 8 here. So we have 8 divided by 4 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. But here we have a negative and a negative, which makes for a positive, because we talked about, right, two negatives make a positive. Okay, moving on. Now we're going to be looking at some products, right, where we're multiplying positives and negatives. Remember, if you have an even number of negative signs, they always end up positive. If you have an odd number, it's going to end up negative. Okay, so here we have to do this multiplication before we can do the addition. So this is going to be a negative 2pq. Now you might ask, why did you write 2pq instead of 2qp? For me, it's all about alphabetizing. I like all my variables to be in nice alphabetical order. For me, it just makes more sense. It's the way my brain works. Okay, now we're going to have this plus. Here we have a negative, and we only have one negative, so it's going to be a negative. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then we're left with that same pq. So if we have a negative 2pq plus a negative 6pq, that's going to give us a negative 8pq. Okay, on to number 8 here. We have to distribute the 3 to this front part and this negative 2. So I'm going to change this to plus and negative, so that way I'm distributing this negative 2 to the back part. Okay, just to make sure we remember to distribute that minus. So 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times the negative t is a negative 3t. I'm going to put plus because I switched that to plus and negative. So negative 2 times 1 is a negative 2. And a negative 2 times a negative t, well, a negative times a negative is a positive. So it's actually plus 2t. At this point, I have this 9 that can be combined with this negative 2. Okay, and when I combine those two together, that gives me a positive 7. Then I have this negative 3t with this positive 2t, which if you have negative 3, positive 2, that brings you together with a negative t. So that's 7 minus t. All right, we're just cooking right along today, guys. So now on the back side here, we're going to do the same exact thing. We have to distribute first before we can do any type of combining. So negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. Negative 3 times the negative y. Negative times the negative is positive 3y. Then on the other side, 4 times x squared is plus 4x squared. 4 times the negative y would be minus 4y. At this point, we have to look at what can we combine. So when we look at this, we have a negative 3x squared. We have, I forgot my squared there. We have this positive 4x squared, and we can bring those together. So a negative 3, positive 4 leaves us with a positive x squared. And here we have this positive 3y, this negative 4y. Those can come together, right? Negative 4, positive 3 leaves you with a negative y. So in the end, we're just left with x squared minus y. Okay, example 10 here, we multiply each one of these by negative a. That's a negative ab. Now we have a negative and a positive, so that's leaving us with a negative 4a plus 4 times 3 is 12, and 4 times negative ab is a negative 4ab. Now, we have this negative AB here, and we have this negative 4AB there. Since they both have the same variables involved, that means we can combine those two. So negative AB, negative 4AB is negative 5AB. Now, this negative 4A cannot be combined with anything because there's nothing else that just has an A. So we just have to bring down the negative 4A, and then the same thing with the 12. The 12 is our only constant, so we just bring it down and add it to our final expression. Okay, and then our last little bit we're going to look at here is properties when we're talking about division, about sums, and with subtraction, right? So when we look at this, okay, a couple quick things, right? Negative a times b is the same as negative a times b. Negative ab is the same as a times a negative b, right? You can put that negative with either a or b, and it still gives you the same exact answer. And then the opposites property, right? You just have to distribute that through. That's exactly what we just did on the last several problems. And then finally, a plus b over c does equal a over c plus b over c, but c over a plus b, right? So, sorry, before I confuse anyone, before I get too technical, right? The idea here is if your denominators are the same, we can just add the numerators. But if your numerators are the same, we can't just add the denominators. Hopefully that's something you guys remember. We've been working on that concept for a very long time. Okay, and then real quick here, okay, this is something that a lot of you guys will run into issues with at points, so we really got to make sure that we're careful with this. If we have a negative, this is the negative of 2 squared is the way that that's actually read. So this means the negative of 2 squared, or a negative 4. Whereas this is the quantity, a negative 2 squared, which means this is really a negative 2 times a negative 2, which is a positive 4. Now, if you put this in any scientific or graphing calculator, those are the responses you're going to get. So it's very important that you're careful when you're entering these values into your calculator, because if you want a negative 2 squared, not the negative of 2 squared, we have to make sure we put it in parentheses when we enter it into our calculator. So on to number 11. Okay, as we look at number 11 here, okay, we have that this is 48 minus 12x squared all over negative 3, right? Well, just like up above, right, we can break this down into 2 parts. So we can break this down into 48 over a negative 3. And then here we have this minus and this negative, right? So those are actually going to make this a positive 12x squared over 3 because the negatives cancel each other out. So if we have 48 divided by a negative 3, that's going to give us a negative 16. And then if we have 12 divided by 3, that's going to give us a positive 4. So this is going to be plus 4x squared. Or if you don't want to leave it in that order because it's not as pretty, you can write it as 4x squared minus 16. Alrighty, so now up above, right, we talked about the fact that if you have a quantity of something squared, right, it's the same as having the positive. Okay, so this negative x squared, right, this right here, this quantity really just equals x squared because you're taking that quantity and squaring it. So this is really 2 minus x squared over a negative 2. Okay, at this point, we can rewrite it just like the last one, 2 over a negative 2. Now we have this minus and a negative, which are going to cancel each other out, and that just leaves us with plus x squared over 2. We can then do 2 divided by a negative 2 is a negative 1 plus x squared over 2, and we're all done. Well, with that problem, we still have 2 more examples to go over. Okay, so on to number 13. Again, we can write this as 12a squared over a negative 3. Then the minus and the negatives will cancel each other out. So it'll be plus 3 squared, which is 9 over 3. Okay, so when we do that, we can do 12 divided by a negative 3, which gives us a negative 4a squared. And then 9 divided by 3, which just gives us 3. So our final answer is this 4a squared plus 3. And then our final example for this lengthy example lesson, okay, we have negative 18t cubed divided by negative 6. I'm going to write all these negatives in this time, so if you're struggling to figure out how I'm determining that, you can see each one individually. So this is going to be plus a negative 12t squared over a negative 6. And then plus 6 over a negative 6. So We have negative and negative would cancel each other out. 18 divided by 6 is 3, so that's 3t cubed, plus a negative divided by a negative gives us a positive, so 12 divided by 6 is 2t squared, and then we have 6 divided by a negative 6 gives us a negative 1. So our final answer is 3t cubed plus 2t squared minus 1. All right, so hopefully that helped you out and reminded you of a bunch of those basic algebra rules that we've learned in the past and got you back on track and got your brain going again in the mathematical world. So I look forward to seeing you in class. Have a good day.